When the devil came, he was not red. He was chrome, 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 and he said, come with me. Come, come, come with me. You must go.
Welcome to the Hell is Chrome podcast, the longest running supporters podcast in San Diego. Returning champions of the supporter landscape. John, our producer, John Cross, is with me, and I'm going to bring him on immediately because he has some very important information for the group and for me personally. Because as we were talking just before the stream started, I have been completely out of the loop for the last week. And this is after last week talking and knocking stuff down and smacking my hands on the table about people not being engaged with the group immediately before closing my apps and not engaging for the group with the group for a week. So, John, I think I just summed up
a bit.
the last 2 minutes of our conversation before going on air. I know that a lot has happened. The Forge the Foundation, that whole group call with supporters that was held. We've got a little bit of news about stuff coming up. I know there was a disappointing end to the soccer season and their time at the sports arena. So, I just want to toss it over to you. What do you want to hit first? What's the most important thing?
Gosh, importance. I'm not really sure. I'll jump in with.
I mean, everything we talk about is important. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's so hard to pick one thing to be the most important, but let's try to do that.
I'd say right off the bat that some people, if you went to the soccer's match, already know, and if you've been in Discord. But for those who haven't heard yet, scarves and scarf chains are in. So Lydia has already started distributing those. Some people got theirs at the soccer's match. I think about 14 people. We even got a couple new members signed up. And those should be ready at the May 4th Chrome Ball Tour event down in Chula Vista for you to be able to pick up your scarf and your scarf chain. So that's probably the most exciting news.
Did you get your scarf?
We finally. Oh no, because I didn't go to the soccer's match. That's too. It was too much for me to try to do in the weekend. I had to cut some things out. Can't do the things I used to do. At least do the same amount of things I used to do. So no, I watched it from home. It was you didn't go, right?
What it was Sunday?
It was Sunday, correct.
So Sunday I actually drove from Austin, Texas to San Diego in one drive. I mean, I did stop for gas and snacks and stuff, but straight through. It's about 19 hours. I wouldn't say it was a bad decision. Definitely wasn't the best decision because something happens right around I don't know, when you've been awake for like right around I think the 20-hour mark, something sort of starts happening in your brain when you're operating like I don't know, say a 2,000 or 3,000 pound vehicle transversing mountains in the eastern part of the county. You might not make the safest decisions. Racing past trucks struggling to climb the mountain, and you're doing about 90. Not that this is me or anything.
That's you, no.
No,
but some
I would never drive a Toyota Prius 90 miles an hour up the side of a mountain weaving around 18-wheelers. Would not. Anyway, that's why I was not at the soccer match.
All right, well, for the Sockers, I mean, I'm sure you've heard they lost in game three. It was for those who went, I'm sure had a fantastic time. It was they did free tickets again for supporters, so there were quite a few people that showed up. I've seen some pictures. They had that section behind the goal, section 19, with a lot of supporters in it from all the different supporter groups coming to support the Sockers. This ended up being their final match at the sports arena before they move up to Oceanside. But the second game was close. They were up 4-1. Savage came back and tied. It went to three overtimes before, three sudden death overtimes before the Sockers finally scored and forced a mini game. But their bench was it just wasn't deep enough. They were exhausted. They just couldn't keep up. And then Savage won handily, really, in the mini game that followed. And it was too bad because they were there. They just, as I said, I think everybody's there. They just didn't have the legs. They didn't have any energy. They just couldn't do it. And the Savage had a much deeper bench, and it showed by the end of the match. But that was, you know, the end of an era for the Sockers at the sports arena, and they'll be up in Oceanside. But a good time had by most people who were there in terms of supporters, and a chance for us to start getting to know some of our fellow supporters and some of these different supporter groups that are going to be making up the alliance that we're putting together for SDFC.
So yeah, sports arena soccer's matches. I hope that they will continue the tradition of like affordable beer and snacks up in Oceanside. I feel like one of the and this sounds, it is a fun sport and it's fun to watch these matches. Don't get me wrong, but I think another part of the experience was that it's such an accessible, like professional sporting event because it's you know the tickets. If the tickets are affordable, the concessions are much cheaper than what you're going to get at any other venue in town. Um, and if you've got a bigger family or you want to take a bunch of people to an event, unless you're like one of these folks that have the deep pockets and are able to just spend a couple $1,000s on a whim, then uh, I- you know I hope that kind of continues up there because you know there's not a lot of very affordable things to do in town.
No, it can be quite expensive. Um, should we pivot to
Well,
SDFC?
you mentioned the
Yep.
alliance. Let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about uh, the alliance and let's get a little bit of an update. I know last week we talked, I think, quite a bit about the alliance and some uh, tossed around this notion about getting it named, getting the section named, stuff like that. And I think there is a list of nominations, I guess, potential names floating around on Discord. I haven't seen the list yet myself, but what is the latest as far as alliance?
Well, I realized I didn't get the list set up, so I'm working on that as I'm speaking here. So I can put it on the screen when we're ready.
Okay.
Um, in terms of name, I know we talked about it last week. I guess you will be happy to know that there is a conversation being had within the Alliance about the name and the process and how that's going to happen. So those conversations are starting. There was an initial idea that we may try to speed that process up. So I did put something in the Discord just to give people a heads up, like, heads up, there's an outside chance, unlikely, but an outside chance we may be seeking input from our members like over this last weekend, which didn't happen as I didn't really expect it to, but just in case, I wanted to make sure people had it. And then I shared a document where I just been keeping track of names that people have offered, just so we have this huge list, and I can bring that on the screen if you'd like to look at it for any of them. And for anybody else, if you want, you can find this list in the MLS channel on Discord. And I've put it up there a couple of times. And once we get some firm direction from the Alliance for how this process is going to play out, then we will share more information, obviously, on how the locals will participate towards that naming. Um, but right now, I've just been collecting names not just from the locals, from any group. Anybody where I hear a name that someone has offered, I've been adding it to the list just so we have a running list we can look at, and maybe that helps generate some other ideas.
Show me the list real quick. I will pick the name and let's just go with that. How does that sound? Oh
You
man,
can
there's a
feel
lot.
free to pick the name, and we'll just
Okay.
leave it at that. But I don't know. Can you read that on your screen where you are? I don't know how big your screen is to see.
Oh yeah, I can read it.
Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna mispronounce all the Spanish names.
Well, sorry. We can. I mean, I can kind of go through a lot of them. We have a lot of. So this first group are all the Spanish names that were chosen. I just divide them into three groups: the Spanish names, the Kumeyaay names, and English names. So there were a lot of people who did some variation of the word alliance. So alianza, something, alianza sin fronteras, or just la alianza by itself. Things to do with that and border. I mean, any of those combinations are one idea. We had Paul on the show with us a few weeks back. He put out their Alta or Altas. Different people give different variations of that. Using the name Barra somewhere in there, Barra Diego, Barra Sol, Corazon de Valle. We have, again, a lot of things to do with border people. Someone, I think it was Sean Duffy, put out El Patio Sin Sombra. So patio without shade for the non-Spanish speakers out there. Thought that was a fun one. So, but
that's the whole stadium, isn't it?
Right. El Pueblo. My personal favorite so far has been El Serape. I like the imagery that could go with that in terms of all of us being independent supporters and how we're woven together into one.
Woven into one, huh?
Thing.
Like just like the marketing materials for the club. What a convenient coincidence for your supporter section to incorporate your initial marketing messaging. So I'm sure that's gonna sure that'll have a lot of fans as well.
So again, somebody had put in Chrome Hell in Spanish. So that would fit in well with us. La Banda, and then any kind of variation along with that. We had, again, I'll do this since we have a lot of English speakers, just in case people don't have it, but, Border Bridge at Puente Frontera, Border Breakers, Without Borders, Sin Fronteras. So lots of different variations on a theme there in terms of, do we keep it about our community a little bit, or an idea, or a culture, or people? But those were where a lot of the names went, especially in terms of Spanish. The Kumeyaay names, I'm not sure I'm going to try pronouncing, but there were several people who offered up ones that I guess maybe I'll try, right? For the people who are listening, people can make fun of my Kumeyaay pronunciation. But Muyui is a word for relatives. So somebody offered that up. So look at that as being one community. Nipawe is what the Kumeyaay called the Western San Diego River Valley. It translates loosely into this house here, or this house located here. I like that idea and concept. I think for a non-native speaker, it is hard pronunciation and probably would be hard for broadcasters and others to pronounce and not get butchered along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peke is a Kumeyaay word for seven. according to the person who submitted it. I don't know if all these are accurate. I'm just going by on the submissions that people have given me, and a tribute to the 7 founding SGs. And then some of the English ones, some variation on 109, the 109, section 109, the 109ers. Um, Someone offered, well, we're not in 109 anymore. We should put that to bed. So why not just do the 138s if we're going to go with that theme, because that's the center section. Um, Someone offered the Benevolent Organization of San Diego Supporters United hosts in soccer specific stadium safe standing section, and I'll let people play around with what that acronym actually is. So you can look at that one, and then some variation on Jack Murphy. So the Murph, the Murphy N, the Murphy Zone, Murphy's Corner. Those were all the different variations that we've had so far. All right,
Is that
thoughts.
boo hiss? Is that what it is?
Boo SDSU hiss.
Oh, thanks for spelling it out for me. I did not quite get that. Huh. Yeah, I
So
think it
obviously
seems like a
some
lot more
adjusted.
thought and effort went into the Spanish names. I like the idea of having a Spanish name personally. I think that fits with, I think it fits with, I think what the kind of vibe that we're going for in the section. Uh, and it also has a lot of kind of a lot of options for, like, you know, adapting it to a section name, or and other like kind of branding possibilities. Should alliance branding ever come into play with anyone. So yeah,
Right.
I like a lot of them. I don't know. I think the English ones, if you want to scroll back down there, I mean, I'm going to just listen, folks. I mean, a lot of thought and effort obviously went into the other language options. Doesn't seem, I don't know how hard the people who pitched these worked on them, but I mean, the one that took the most work, I think, is the one that says boo hiss. So, you know, I'm just saying the effort not quite there in English, which is fine, but no judgments here. No judgments here. You know what? All of the suggestions are equally good, equally have equal possibility of becoming the name, uh, perhaps.
Well, maybe on paper they do.
They are definitely all on the same list.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think there were I I would imagine it's probably going to, just from my conversations I've had with people, it's probably going to lean more to a Spanish name. Um, and I would agree. I think there was more thought about community, culture, people, those kinds of things in the Spanish names. Other than, I mean,
I like the Alliance Sin Fronteras one, Alianza Sin Fronteras. Um,
yeah,
I like that because, obviously Borders has multiple meanings, multiple interpretations. I know that in some stadiums, some teams, different supporter groups are separated by, you know, other fans or sections. They don't all sit together.
right.
And maybe if they're in the same sections, maybe they all have their own spot in the section. I like the idea that, the alliance members, all of the supporters are in the same section without borders, right? Like we're all there together. I like that. I like that better than suggesting that we're woven into one. To be honest,
And I think there's a lot of people who want to look for a name that is inclusive, to go along with the alliance, like what you were talking about with that example. for La Alianza Sin Fronteras. Um, and then there's just kind of a debate that some people have been having. Do you keep alliance in the name? Do you not keep alliance in the name? Do you keep alliance in the name for the purpose of really showing that these are all independent supporter groups that have come together as opposed to an overarching big identity? Those are all conversations that I'm sure will happen among all the supporter groups once we get to the place of really talking about names and figure out a
Mm-hmm.
format and how we want to present these. But I've just, like I said, been keeping a list of all the names that I hear and come across, and mostly they've been from locals because I am a member of the locals, obviously. But as I hear some names from other groups as well, I've just been throwing them on the list because I figure we might as well look at all of them. Um,
I want to mention, and this is me talking to you, but also talking in my own way to the leaders of all of the supporter groups who are in these alliance talks that I have not been allowed into. Um, Listen, because you can't listen to me in the official channel, listen to me here. No matter how hard each group tries to define the alliance and the parameters of the alliance, basically, like you had mentioned, keeping alliance in the name because that's going to show that we're all independent supporters and we're not all under. That matters to the groups and maybe the founders and leaders of those groups, I think a lot more than the common, like everyday membership of the groups, especially the larger groups. Um, I don't think that anybody will be able to keep people who maybe identify or relate more with the larger kind of supporter section, right? Like, and I'm talking about myself, by the way, because I'm one of these people where I yes, I recognize the difference between the groups and different reasons and all of that stuff. I recognize it, and I don't have an issue with any of that. But for me, I feel like a member of the section, right? The overall supporter section. I am a member of the locals, a member of Chavos. Um, I'm going to join the military veteran group one as well, and I'm probably going to join all of the supporter groups because I want to support supporters and support supporter groups. So if they'll have me, if they'll take my money, then I'll give it to them and I'll get my little scarf. But because that's how I do supporter stuff. That's how I do supporter thing. That's how I do it, right? And whatever the name of this alliance, you know, I I might choose to, represent that as I might want to have that name on a shirt or on a hat, on a sticker. And that's fine, right? And I think that for a lot of people who maybe are not even supporters yet, people who are going to see what we do and want to be a part of it, I think that kind of relationship with supporter culture and with especially this supporters alliance, um, maybe a lot of them will kind of come at it that way, and like that's like okay, but my overall point is just that, like, no matter how hard we try in forming this alliance to maintain, you know, group identity and all of that, like maintaining all of that individual group stuff, that's up to the individual groups. I don't think that is the responsibility of the alliance itself. So if we're talking about an alliance as being a separate kind of governing body, right, than that of the individual supporters groups, there's going to have to be some kind of, I don't know if it's a council, a committee, some kind of leadership structure made up of members of the other supporter groups that will kind of, you know, manage the alliance aspect of this, right? And like their responsibility will be specifically to represent all of the SGs in their dealings with like the club and the venue. And their job, their mandate will be to kind of advocate for everyone, not just the individual groups. There can't be kind of like a self-interested, like leaning, like if a member of the locals is on this alliance council or whatever that governing body looks like they can't be trying to do from that position what's best for locals, right? They need to be doing what's best for the entire section. Um, so you know, preserving that individual group identity is not, I think, in that mandate for like that position on the alliance. Does this make sense? Am I just way
Yeah.
out in the middle of the ocean here? Does that have a little bit of grounding with you?
Yeah, well, I was trying to make some notes as you were talking so I could kind of hit on some of the points.
Yeah,
I'd
no,
like
I
to
just
go
and I just
back.
kept talking, so I apologize for that.
That's fine. Um, for the name, I just so I had mentioned a couple of names in there that I like, but I want to be clear to everyone. I don't care what the name is because I feel, and I was telling Andrew this at the beginning. I really don't. I feel like we could have any name. The meaning behind the name is going to come from our actions and how we
Hmm.
own that name, whatever it happens to be. I'm just ready for us to move to get to that point so that we can kind of own whatever that is as our alliance name, and start using it to talk about the entire group instead of rattling off 7 supporter groups all the time, or 8 or 9 or however many we get to. So I think there's some, it will be beneficial to all of us in the long run once that name happens. And like I said, there's internal conversations going on right now. For everybody to know, there is an alliance council right now that's made up of 2 reps from every group, every one of the 7 initial SGs, and we'll have representatives from any new SG that becomes a full part of the alliance. And some of the discussions right now are, how does that work? Does that alliance council do everything? Are they doing the managing kind of the way you described it, or does the alliance council represent the individual SGs and help set the direction? But you have others, like you said, that maybe put the alliance at the center of their focus, even though they might be a member of the locals, or they might be a member of Riptides or Chavos or any of the other groups, that if they're in that kind of role on the alliance side, they're really looking at the benefit of the section and match days. So once again, so everybody knows that the alliance, the agreement between all the SGs, is that's really helping us manage match day operations and dealing specifically with the club in terms of tickets and other things, so that we are there together as one voice. Outside of match days, we do our individual things and our SGs. You do your meetups, you do your community work. Um, but on match days, that is our agreement, is to stand together. So at some point, there is going to have to be some kind of structure. And those are the
Hmm.
conversations that are happening right now. What does that structure look like? What's going to work best for this alliance and everyone else to be able to help manage what we need to do for game day operations and allow us to put that best voice forward, a single voice forward, as one unified section of 3,000 people on match days.
Yeah, I think that's important to kind of make that distinction because and I'm just pulling things out of the air, but like let's say you have these 7 groups, what, and then the member from one group on the alliance decides that, hey, uh, my group should be the group on the lower level, right behind the net. That's article allegation. That's where my group is going to be, and like from their position on the alliance, tries to like enforce that, right, and like make that like the standard, and then decide where the other groups go. you know I would say that that is one of those kind of maybe abuses of the position, where somebody is acting in the interest of one group instead of like what's best for the whole section. I mean, that's a very hypothetical situation. I don't even know how that would ever come to be, but that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Like, uh, somebody on the alliance council should not be, you know, self-interested in using that position, for the benefit of just one group, right? You've really got to be kind of thinking about everybody in that supporter section, regardless of
Right.
what SG they're a member of.
And I mean, yes, theoretically any of those things could happen, but I will sit here and tell you, as someone who sits in those meetings and has been there, and one of the two reps for the locals along with our president Steve Brokoff, that this is a good group of people that are there. We all, but no,
Yeah,
but
I know.
what
I
I'm
know
saying is,
all of
like,
them. I know all of them. I know they are.
we
I'm just
we all
talking
want the
in
same
general.
thing.
Yeah.
And I would say the conversations that I've been able to be a part of, and as we're working through this, there is a concerted effort by everyone to do this right, to take the time we need here in the beginning to lay the structure and the foundation, because we all want the same thing. We all want to be there shoulder to shoulder as one voice on match day. We all know that's important. And in those meetings, I have been very impressed with everyone. Not that I didn't expect it, but you never know what to expect when you actually start having the conversations. And everybody has really put the interest of the section, what it's going to look like on match day, at the forefront, and how we can best work together to do that. So, in that sense, super happy and super excited with where the conversations are going right now. And, a lot. There's a lot of conversations right now just to get those initial good structures in place, so that hopefully, I'm hoping, maybe this is more me, so I maybe better be careful how I say this. Personally, as someone who's on there, I'm hoping soon-ish we can start kind of expanding our operations, I guess, for lack of a better word, where more than just the two people from each supporter group are are in these conversations, that we start to bring in more people from all the SGs to start contribute to help build this, right? And that's where I think personally, again, we're going to have to be there at some point. um, but right now it's getting those very initial structure. I'm no different, I would put it, than Jerry, Drew, Steve, and Daryl, the four of them getting together to outline the initial structures of the locals before starting to bring everybody in when they were going through bylaws and everything else. So really just trying to make sure we're all on the same page, we're all in agreement for this framework, so then we can start, moving towards this goal of where we want to be, not just opening day, but the whole time we're ever in that section together in the north end of Snapdragon.
There's those two words again.
Yeah,
North End. They're bad. They're bad words. They're not good words. They're bad.
they're going to be used a lot.
That's got to be the after the name of the alliance. We got to name the section something else, or we're going to be stuck with North End. I I don't like. Okay, let me just say, as somebody who can read a compass, can read a map, you know, San Diego is not. The only thing San Diego is north of is Tijuana, right? Like, San Diego is not. Nothing about north like speaks to like San Diego to me. Um, just it's just not good. It's not good. Like, if we were way up like in the Bay, right? And that's north, right? Northern California. It gets cold up there. It's frigid. That's like that to me. That's the north, right?
I
This
don't know.
isn't
The
the
other
north.
third of the state above that might disagree.
Oh, I mean, dude, nobody lives there. Come on, man. That's like the states I just drove across. There was nobody there.
But you're right. The north end, as we all know, is just specifically referring to inside the stadium, and it's those sections of seats for lack of a better definition at the moment. And that's what has stuck in internal conversations. So I agree with you in terms of
We're going
name.
to be
I would
stuck
like to
with
get
it.
something out there so that we can speak about that section differently.
The here we go. The pit, the hole. Uh, okay, two. I got two. That's all I got. The pit or
That's
the
it.
hole. Okay, I'm sure there's more places um that have that kind of vibe to it. North End ain't one of them.
There's something that might naturally come about once we decide on a name as well. I mean, it
Yes,
just,
it might
you
follow
talk
it,
about
right? It
this.
might just come.
Yeah,
It might be very obvious.
right. So I think once that gets sorted out, then figuring out for section and things
Like I
probably
think
will be a little
sirens and
easier.
like the cove, right? Like cove
Right,
kind of very natural, like no brainer type of thing. I think. I mean, maybe
right.
they had struggled and had weird conversations to find that, but to me, it fits and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. I think we've
What if we just called it the Cove? Like it's already got a name. It's the Cove, right?
it's just
So
it's just the code for everyone.
yeah, there we go. Boom, problem
Yeah,
solved.
done. All right, we don't need to do the name anymore, right? Like we're done. All right, you ready to move on to the Forge the Foundation series since
So what
we
was
spent
this
an
thing?
awful lot of the
Because
podcast here on the name so
I
far.
think we talked about it a few times on the show. We gave out maybe some wrong dates or wrong information at some point. I don't know if we did. I don't, fact check myself or ever go back to what was said the previous week. So I don't know. But it did happen, right? So were you
It did
there?
happen last night. I was. And that so there's a couple things about this. The goal from the club is to get 100 people to the supporter summit meeting on Sunday. And initially, each supporter group was allocated 15 spots, which for anybody who can do the math, that's actually 105. But that's what we were going with is 15 spots for each supporter group to get basically 100 people at this supporter summit on Sunday, where we're going to be at Snapdragon and see if we can work out some initial conversations for things we want to see in the supporter section in Snapdragon Stadium on match days. So Monday was the I don't know, the bad news kind of thing. It was the here are all the restrictions. Here's Snapdragon's restrictions, here's MLS restrictions, here are some of the things, the parameters we have to work within. And now this week is to have those conversations to try to come up with some potential solutions or ideas that we might want to explore further. And those we should be prepared, all supporter groups and ideas on Sunday as part of those conversations. And we'll be doing I won't, not really a tour of the stadium, but we'll be going into the stadium to look at the supporter section as well. Now, the locals, we filled our 15 spots. We actually had more than 15 people interested. So we actually have a wait list of, I don't know, 6-ish people, somewhere around there. Um, there is a chance, I won't go through all the mechanics of how this may happen, but there is a chance that some spots may be freed up from other SGs
Who
who
don't have
maybe
15
for this
people
weekend
in them?
won't be able to bring all 15 people that they might like to bring, um, in a different situation. So if that happens, two things might happen. So we're recording this on a Tuesday. So anybody who listens to this, you need to pay close attention in Discord if you're not already signed up and you think you would want to be a part of this. Like maybe someone who hosts a podcast who missed all the information last week because they weren't on the Discord.
I did know
Um,
about the stadium thing. I will say
yeah. Okay.
I do have a conflict on Sunday, so
Okay.
yeah.
So, and it's from 9:30 to 11:30, so that may rule some people out in the morning on Sunday for this supporter summit. But there's a chance that if some spaces open up, so all those people who are on the wait list, you might still be able to go. And if additional spots are open, there might be a chance for people who maybe missed the sign up or didn't get a chance. I know Steve had posted something in the Discord telling people that because we have our own internal form to sign up for this, so we're keeping track of our people and our reps before we turn those names over to the club. So you might want to get in Discord and double check that. But this is one of those crazy things that we said. This month of April was just, it's been hectic with communication and when things get solidified and when we know what's going to happen. So if you are at all interested in being a part of this and lending your voice potentially to the supporter summit, and you are, well, I don't know, possibly even on Friday, I don't know, depending when you might listen to this, or if you're watching it live with us right now, you may want to get in there and fill out the form at least, get your name there so you have the possibility that if a spot opens up, you might be able to join us and lend your voice to those conversations on Sunday. And as Jerry mentioned last night in the online meeting, this is not going to be the only time this happens. They're going to have other conversations like this where we will be sending reps. This is just the first one, but we are always happy as the locals to have our members get in there and help contribute to the conversation. So check the Discord, check the MLS channel, and check the announcements. Those are the two big places to look for any last minute updates or changes to spots that may open up for the supporter summit on Sunday.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned the Forge the Foundation meeting Monday was to like let us know some of the restrictions and all of that.
Right.
What or anything that surprised you or that people really should be aware of? Are we talking like flagpole length or what are we talking here?
Yes. Yeah, there's I think anybody who's been to a soccer match at Snapdragon, um, and I have not yet. I am one of the few people who hasn't made it to any events to Snapdragon at the moment. Just it just never works out for my schedule. Every time I think I might have the opportunity to go. But a lot of things I've heard people complain about sizes of flags and length of poles. Frankly, a lot of the stuff for the locals out there that we were familiar with in 109 and able to bring in uh, would be restricted. The ability to host and post signage, banners, trapos, those kinds of things, is going to be a challenge. There's just some limitation on actual wall space. I mean, we had great display space at Torero because the seats behind the goal were up so high. We could drape and hang a bunch of things behind the goal. So we don't have that. You're practically on the field. There are some restrictions for how things can be, attached, affixed, whatever, to walls, and they're mostly cement walls. They're not easy things to zip tie to, which like we did at 109. So there's going to be some significant challenges for signage displays, banners, trapos, and so forth. There was some conversation about, is it realistic to um, modify or enhance the pulley system, like if we want to do tifos, because right now it's just what holds up the net behind the field goal, and the sirens use that. But there's, usually even when something goes up, there's a noticeable sag in the middle. So is there a way to fix that in some way so it's not just for pulling up a net for field goals and football matches, American football matches, that we could better use it for especially larger TIFO displays. So that's a conversation that's being explored and something hopefully we can get more information about on Sunday. There was talk about tailgating restrictions. So if you're, where and when those things could happen. So those will be part of the conversations as well, because as everybody knows, one of the dilemmas is that whole property, which is basically a giant parking lot right now, like we had for Qualcomm, is all going to be buildings. Over the next 5, 10, 20 years, they're going to be building structures constantly there. So looking down the road, do we, if they have a spot we could do tailgating, say for next year, but it's only going to be available for 2 years, do we do that, or do we look at other, longer term solutions? So there's some restrictions with the park by the trolley station. So I don't think anything is a hurdle that can't be jumped over, right? But it'll take some work, and we're going to have to decide what's important to us and how do we enter into matches efficiently. Like those are some of the conversations as well. So there's just a lot to start conversations about with Snapdragon. And we're fortunate there's been so many soccer games, and there's a professional team that plays there right now that we can draw on some of those people's experience. Capo stands, that's part of the conversation. And if we have them, where do they go? How many are there? So there's just, right,
Oh, I
all
mean, I
those
would
little things
think
to
we need
start.
3 at a minimum. I can tell you that right now.
Right. So those are like, we have to start thinking about again. So then these are bigger conversations for the Alliance that we're going to have, start getting more people involved in these bigger, broader conversations at some point. But we have to start thinking about these things now, and understanding if there is, I don't know, I'll call it a deal breaker, I guess, but if there's something where, maybe I'll phrase it in terms of cost benefit ratio. The cost of trying to do something we might want to do just doesn't get us the benefit we want. We need to know that early so we can pivot and be creative for other solutions. So that was a big part of the meeting, specifically on Monday, and then so we can start tossing out some ideas on Sunday just to get some initial conversations going.
So I think the the limitation as far as where to post signs, like, that's not really surprising. We can all look at the section and see that we don't have a lot of great options for our big, beautiful signs. That I think one of my favorite things about the look of Royal matches was all of our awesome banners. But
Yes.
let me ask about this, because we ran into this during the Dortmund match. Flag size and flagpole length. Is this coming from MLS, or is this Snapdragon? The issue with flagpoles.
I'd say there's, and I'm trying to remember correctly, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is a Snapdragon issue, because even if I think about it, seeing MLS matches, I've seen some giant flags and things at different MLS matches and polls. And I think, it's a conversation we can have to see if that changes. Could we only for that section? Because they have most, again, if I remember correctly, most of their requirements are really more specific to the stadium, right? So part of this, just like we had with Loyal, is can we get that exception for a supporter section where, we get some special benefits, but that comes with special responsibilities, right? We got to make sure if we want to have that we're doing things the way we say we're going to do them. And we were able to do that at the loyal matches quite a bit. And we had big flags and we had lots of drums, and you got to bring them in ahead of time and make sure things are checked. We always had to have any TIFO display things that we did, even with the loyal, had to be checked ahead of time. There's really no difference on those. It's just, can we have those conversations to tweak some of their rules specific for match days in that supporter section? Um, with some special understanding. It's not, you're not changing general stadium policies, but you're having special rules for the supporter section. Again,
So
all big conversations that need to have.
this is something I'm personally invested in after my experience with Snapdragon Security at the Dortmund match. Experience that I would say was not great, not I'd say less than ideal, uh, rather insulting. I would say it was an insulting experience, a presumption of criminality and guilt. Um, Practically being asked to take my drum apart to make sure I wasn't bringing in, I don't know, inside the body of the drum. Just really it reminded me of, you know, being in the Navy and some power tripping gate sentry, like uh, giving you crap because the bottom of your jeans are frayed, right? Like, you can't leave the ship, your jeans are frayed on the bottom, and like making me turn around and go change clothes to leave the ship on my day off. Like little things like that, like these little micro tyrants that you would encounter. And I think anybody that's been in the military knows exactly the kind of people I'm talking about. Um, like this is what it reminded me of, trying to bring my drum into Snapdragon a solid like 4 hours before the match.
Yeah.
So that being said, this flagpole thing and this flag thing, absolutely ridiculous. There is no reason that there should not be some sort of exception for the supporter section to have, you know, big beautiful flags. uh, I think that this is something where this alliance and the importance of the alliance really comes, to the forefront, because uh, an individual supporter group is not going to get this exception on its own, nor is the alliance even going to be able to get this exception on its own. This is going to take the club, the $500 million club, and its silk suit CEO or whatever they wear. It's going to take like that kind of firepower to go to bat for us to get these exceptions somehow done, right? Like you have to go to the top to get something like that. And uh, I mean, to me, that should be a priority, right? That should be a priority for the alliance, because it's ridiculous to say that. I can't remember what the length restriction was. I want to say it was something like 5 feet for a flagpole, something like that.
Something like that.
Which, I mean, come on, we're gonna look like a bunch of little kids at a parade waving those tiny American flags. Like that's gonna be the supporter section. My little tiny supporter group flag. Like, get real, man. That's gonna look like crap on TV. It's gonna make the supporter section look weak. It's gonna make the club look weak, and that's something that it shouldn't even take the supporters alliance making the demand. I feel like the club should already be fighting that fight, regardless, because I know there's people at the club who understand and know that that's ridiculous.
Well, I would say the club is making those initial pushes. This is partly why we're having these conversations. And I would like to remind everyone who might be listening that we went through similar things to this at USD. I mean, we called it Grandma's house, right? That was the nickname. And there were certain things that we couldn't do because the nature of being on a college university, a private
A
college
Catholic university.
Right,
I
yeah.
mean,
But part of it
hey, at least
is,
they let
I
us
mean,
drink on Sunday. Like,
right. I think and we're not. We got so used to what it was like at Torero because we had built up that trust.
Sure.
We had earned kind of that grace because we were responsible with what we were doing in the section. And over time, as we had asks, it wasn't a big deal. And I think this is the difference between a soccer supporter group specifically and most other sport situations. I think most of these stadia around the country have these very restrictive rules because there are individuals who will always try to sneak things in and break the rules and do things. But as a supporter group, we know we kind of police ourselves. So we know in order to get the experience we want in the stadium, it's a deal we kind of make. We will be responsible with these things, and I think we really showed that when we were doing the loyal matches of being responsible in our section. I mean, heck, the security and stuff would say it all. We cleaned up our section at the end of the match and didn't leave trash laying around. I mean, we were there on time. We brought our stuff, and because we did those things, it gave us that trust to, like, yes, we can bring in big flags and giant poles that we wouldn't normally allow in the stadium, and wave these flags because that's all people are doing. They're waving the flags and having fun. They're singing and chanting and having fun for 90 minutes in the match. I think Snapdragon, and this is no knock on the sirens at all, but I think they are wary of a full, I'm going to say it, north end section of 3,000 people. Um, and they're worried about like I don't know, a mob mentality. Like things could go sideways really fast. And I don't think there's enough people involved in Snapdragon and probably with their security that have um, strong soccer knowledge background, and especially of our local community and how we react in supporter group situations like that. So I think it just takes some time to have those conversations and build the trust. I fully expect we will be there to have the kind of supporter section we want. Um, you know, in terms of what we can control, it's obviously, we can't control having shade, and we can't control, the roof and whether
Well,
they're
if they
going
let
to
us
do
bring
a better
umbrellas
pulley
in, I could
system,
shade myself.
right?
Let's get that
But
umbrella exception.
I think in terms of flags and drums
Easy
and getting
ups.
all that
We,
squared away, yeah, I don't think in the long run, I think there's going to be initial hard conversations in the beginning, but I don't think that's going to be a problem in the long run. Just like those were initial difficult conversations with USD. We'll get over that hurdle, um, and then we just, right, we have to kind of build that trust as a section, and the more we do that and stay true to what we say we're going to do and how we support in that section, the more um, latitude I would
sure,
expect we have
sure.
over time to be able to do some cool supporter activities in that section.
All right, John, we're hitting about an hour. I want to make sure we get to a couple of kind of things that we have to get to. What is coming up specifically that our members need to be aware of? Of course, May 4th rapidly approaching. You already mentioned that scarves are in. Um, is there anything before May 4th that people should be aware of in Sunday's walkthrough, and what else is coming?
Well, just general things to keep in mind, but also pay attention to social media because Dago Boys are loosely doing Friday drum circles at the trolley station at Snapdragon. I don't think they're doing the next one till May 3rd because, again, we have to work around any event schedules and stuff that's going on at Snapdragon. But if you're interested in coming and learning some of the chants and songs, they're usually going Fridays, and Chavos are usually going Sundays, but it's going to be switched up this Sunday because of the supporter summit. But they're usually going Sundays in Balboa Park, Sunday mornings in Balboa Park. So those are just two general things. And then I would like to just a quick update on our Rocket League team. They have just wrapped up the Swiss stage of the Supporters Gaming League Cup. They ended up going 2-2 since we last were on the air, they won their first two matches, but then they lost last Wednesday and they lost last night
It was
against
tragic,
two.
John. I watched the
Yeah,
match.
I know.
Uh,
Last night was
Again,
brutal.
5 games.
Game five.
You know, ECRC is such a tough team. Like they're really
Yeah,
good. I mean, our team is really good too. We've, I think we're most evenly matched with ECRC. We really, every time I've watched the locals
it's
Rocket League
tight.
team
Everyone.
play ECRC, it's always, these are best of 5 series. It always goes 5 games. It always goes into overtime for multiple games.
One goal matches every game.
It is it is so stressful watching those stupid cars fly around that those fields. Um, but yeah, last night in that fifth game in that overtime, and the overtime, this is golden goal overtime. The match itself, I think these matches are 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, and then the
Okay,
overtime just goes until somebody scores. The overtime, it was more than five
was
minutes last night.
longer. Yeah,
It was longer than an actual match, the overtime match, before somebody got that breakthrough game-winning goal. And you know, they lost, but it's not like they're getting killed out there. They're literally the two best teams in the league. And this is what the commentators were saying even on the stream. Like, these are the two best teams in the league, and every time they play, it's like this overtime, and somebody's got to win, but that's what happened last night. So um I don't think that knocks them out. Right, that Swiss stage is
no.
done.
Right. So the Swiss stage will wrap up this week. The locals have finished their matches. The other teams, there's still some teams that need to finish their matches. And once those are done, the 8 remaining teams will be split into 2 brackets, and it's basically a double elimination tournament, but the top 4 are truly in the double elimination part, and the bottom 4 are kind of already in the losers bracket. So really they can only lose once. Um, but then we'll get to elimination matches. So they're just waiting to hear how the other matches finish to see if they finish in the top 4. They're going to be in the top bracket or the lower bracket when they get to that elimination tournament. So as soon as we know more, we'll post. And again, if you haven't seen it yet, the streams usually get posted day of in Discord and the random channel, and they're quite entertaining. So if you get the chance, we try to get the link out on socials, but it just depends how early we get the information in order to turn around and get that out there. But if you haven't had a chance to see it, it's a lot of fun. And hopefully they'll end up in that top group and maybe have another match against Emerald City um, down the road here,
I
because
don't
they are
want to play.
exciting
I
matches.
don't want to. You know what? If they could just, they don't need to play them again. That's fine. If somebody else wants to eliminate ECRC before we have to play them again, that's fine with me. Go
That
ahead.
would be nice.
I don't
All
know
right,
if
well,
anybody
switching
can though.
gears.
We might be the only team that can beat them.
Switching gears to our kickball teams, we do have 2 of them, one playing in Mira Mesa and one in North Park. They are both top of the table as it stands right now this week. They have games coming up on Thursday. Mira Mesa team is 3-1, and the North Park team, I believe, are still undefeated at 6-0. So they will be playing, and we wish them the best of luck. And I haven't had any updates from our pub quiz team in a while, so I don't know where they are in their league and their process. So hopefully we can get some updates for next week. Those are the last of my just updates and announcements. There should be some things coming up on the radar after May 4th Chrome Ball Tour event for some events and or announcements with SDFC coming up in May. That will
All
probably
right.
be of interest to people.
All right. So yeah, it sounds like after May 4th, there's going to be. Listen, the grumblings I've heard is like, I mean, this is rumors. Not that I know anything, but I would say manager, maybe some more players. Uh, the team's got to hire them at some point. So at some point, we're
Right.
going to find out who they are, and things are going to start moving quick once we start rolling into the late spring, early summer. So yeah, just keep tuned here. We'll keep everybody up to date. I think next week maybe we can get into summer soccer in San Diego. I know there's a bunch of stuff coming up that we weren't able to get to, but yeah. So come back next week and we'll talk about the this state. It's not a stadium tour. I'm just going to call it a stadium tour for lack of a better description, but we can do a debrief on that and talk a little more about Alliance progress. So, all right, we'll see
Sounds
everybody
good.
next week. Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Bye.